When I finish a haircut in this room, I sweep the hair into a plastic bag and carry it down to the bin on the road myself, because a bag of somebody else's hair in your trash is evidence of exactly one thing. I did that Friday evening. I'll do it again tonight. I won a free year in the Philippines, 12 months in a furnished apartment in Baguio, utilities and both plane tickets out of a barrel from a company in Manila. I was 69 when they read my name out, and I'm 70 now. My name is Jolene Hovda. The year ended on June 30th, and I cannot afford 1 month of what it gave me. I'm still in Baguio anyway. I'm in a room up the hill from the one they put me in, with rain coming sideways at a window that only opens 4 inches, and at 4 o'clock this afternoon, a woman is coming to have her hair cut. In the drawer of the little table, there's a laminated card out of the welcome folder with the date of my flight home printed on it in blue. July 30th, 2026, 11:40 in the morning, Manila to Detroit. 11 days ago, that plane left without me. I cut hair in Escanaba, Michigan for 34 years. That's the Upper Peninsula on the bay. 12,000 people, and everybody's grandmother knows what you did. I rented a chair in a 3-chair shop on Ludington Street. $145 a week to the woman who owned the building, and the color and the foils and the towels were mine to buy. 34 years standing on a rubber mat with my arms up over my head. And a good share of what I made went into the pocket of my apron and stayed there. Cash for a cut. Cash for a perm on a Saturday when the shop was closed, and it was me and one lady and the radio. Nobody in that town ever wrote a tip down in my life. I ran about $18,000 a year through that register, the booth rent, the supplies, and $7,400 on top of them, and the rest went into a coffee can and then into groceries. So I told the government I made about $7,400 a year. In a good year, I actually made 24, 26. I understood what I was doing. I just thought the bill would come later, and I never asked how much later or whether I'd still be standing up when it came. I filed at my full retirement age, which for a woman born in 1956 is 66 years and 4 months, in August of 2022. Today, it's $977 a month, gross. They take $202.90 out of that for Medicare Part B before it moves anywhere. $774 lands in the credit union. No pension behind it, no husband's record, no 401 anything. I looked once at dropping Part B, but if I ever set foot in a Michigan hospital again, the penalty for the skipped years follows me for life, so it comes out every month, $774. The cash that fed me at 40 ate me at 70. I did that. Nobody did it to me, and I'd rather say it plain than have somebody say it for me in the comments. Verna rented the chair next to mine for 19 years. She's 66, still cutting, husband on oxygen in a 2-bedroom on the south side of town. She's the only person from that life still in this one. I paid that $145 for the last time on December 21st, 2024. My hands were fine, my shoulder wasn't. The other thing you need to know about me is that I enter things. Church raffles, radio call-ins, the barrel at the hardware store, and lately the ones on Facebook where you like the page and tag 2 friends. I won a chest freezer in 2011. For 34 years, I listened to other people's plans 8 hours a day. Entering things was the closest I got to having one. Somebody else does the picking. You only have to be in the barrel. On May 22nd, 2025, at 8:40 in the morning at my kitchen table, a company called Kalina Living did a live drawing on Facebook and read my name off a folded slip. They're a relocation outfit out of Makati, and they bill their American clients through a company registered in Nevada, which is the only reason an office in Makati ever ended up holding my social security number. The contest was called A Year in the Pines. 12 months in a furnished studio in Baguio, utilities and internet included, and both plane tickets. July 1st to June 30th. The room ran out on June 30th, and the seat home was July 30th, and nobody there ever noticed the month in between. At the bottom of the poster was a permit number from the Department of Trade and Industry, a real requirement here, which I did not look up until much later. And in the rules, one line I read 4 times and decided was a typographical error. Approximate retail value, $31,600. I sold my Malibu for $2,300, spent some of it on a passport and a storage unit and one good suitcase, and flew out of Detroit on June 28th. The unit was 10 by 10, heated, month to month, and it was the only heated one anybody had that week, $119. In the bottom of the suitcase, under a winter coat I have never once needed here, went a flat case with a pair of Japanese shears I bought in '98 for $410 and had sharpened by the same man in Green Bay for 26 years. I did not have a reason. I told myself it was sentimental. I landed in Manila on the evening of the 29th. A van took me up the mountain on the 30th, 5.5 hours, 4 of them across rice country, and the last one inside a cloud. And a young woman from Kalina met me at the door with the folder and the laminated card in it. Unit 4C, 4th floor of a building off Lagarda, 6 years old, 40 units, with a view of somebody's roof and, when the cloud lifted, the pines going up the ridge. The woman who runs that building is Lorna Balanag, 52, 10 years in the job, and she is the reason the place functions. Twice a year, she goes through the electric co-op's bill line by line and carries the lines she won't accept down to their office herself. I watched her go in October before I had done one thing for anybody in this country. In September, I needed my hair cut, which is a peculiar sentence for me to say. I found a one-chair shop on Bakakan Road and a woman named Emmeline, national certificate framed on the wall, prices in ballpoint on the back of last year's calendar taped inside the door. She let me watch, and then she let me talk, and after that I went back every 6 weeks for a year, mostly to stand in a room that smelled right. I told her that first afternoon she could put me to work any Saturday she wanted. She laughed the way you laugh at something that isn't a joke and said, "No, ma'am Jolene, foreigners cannot take money for this here." Then she asked what brand of lightener we use in the States. It went past me like a price on a wall. The year is why all of this hurts. It stopped being a vacation around the 3rd month. I had a market I went to and a woman I bought eggs from, knew which jeepney went past the cathedral and which one turned before it, and learned that in the wet season, nothing dries here. Not towels, not shoes, not the inside of a bag. Every month, Lorna posted the electric notice in the lobby. 8 pesos 25 a unit in September, 12.29 by July. I watched that number climb for a year, the way you watch weather in a country you're only visiting. My utilities were paid. That was the prize. Then, in September, the first thing changed. Before I came, I'd read about a retirement visa here where you put $10,000 in a Philippine bank and it sits there and you're allowed to stay. That option was taken away in September. What's left for somebody my age with a pension is a deposit of $15,000 plus $1,500 to process it. My income clears their requirement. They want $800 a month and I have $977. It was never the income, it's the $15,000. So I'm a tourist, and I've been one for 13 months. You extend and extend again, and carry a plastic card with a chip in it that says you're registered, and the whole business runs about 31,200 pesos a year, which is $514. And there's a clock on it. Somebody who came in the way I did can stay 36 months from the day they landed and not one day longer. I landed on June 29th, 2025. So on June 29th, 2028, I leave, whether I want to or not. That was the month I understood I hadn't moved here. I was running out of clock here. Lorna has a daughter, Shira, 24, who is interviewing at a hotel up in Camp John Hay in January. I offered to do her hair on the 11th. I hadn't had my hands in anybody's hair since December, and I wanted it more than she did. I bought a lightener and a developer on Session Road in a brand I'd never used in my life, put 20 volume on hair that had never had a thing on it, and pulled it orange. She looked at it in the mirror and said, "It's okay, Ma'am Jolene." It was not okay. Lorna paid 3,500 pesos at a salon on Abanao Street to bring it back to something her daughter could wear. Shira pinned it up for the interview and got the job, which somehow made it worse. Nobody told me about the 3,500. I heard it from Emmeline 6 weeks later, sideways. 7 months in the country, and I had cost that family $57 by being generous at them. In December, a woman at Calinao named Sheila emailed me a W-9. Name, address, social security number, sign here for our records. I filled it in on my knee in the lobby and sent it back inside 10 minutes, and I did not ask one question about why they wanted it. If you're waiting for the part where somebody tricks me, it isn't coming. An envelope came up from Manila on February 14th, 1099-MISC, Box 3, Other Income, $31,600. The same number that was in the contest rules, the one I'd decided was a typographical error. It was the shop window their marketing had priced up, a year at what the serviced places in Camp John Hay ask, 2 tickets at full fare, and the $12,000 relocation package they sell, put on the poster and never delivered. And their accounting had reported that same number to the United States government as income paid to Jolene Hovda. I put it in a drawer for 5 weeks. I didn't understand what it obligated me to do. I was turning 70 in a month, and I put it in a drawer. I carried it downstairs on March 21st and asked Lorna to read it with me, because she reads paperwork for a living and I don't. She read the whole page. Then she went back to the top and put her finger on the number and said, "This is not what this unit rents for." I asked her what it rents for. She said, 29,160 pesos with the power and the water and the internet on it, every month. I collect it. Unit 4C. That's $5,760 a year at 60 3/4. Put the 2 airplane tickets on top and you're somewhere near 7,000. They had told my government they gave me 31,600. I wrote to Sheila on March 26th. Polite, 2 paragraphs. I asked whether the number on the form could be looked at. I also looked up that permit number off the bottom of the poster. It's real. The promotion was registered and approved the way promotions have to be here, and the rules posted with it say in plain type that the winner is responsible for any tax on the prize. That page had been public since May of 2025, where I could have read it. The 20% Philippine tax on it the company paid itself before I was ever handed a key. It was the American side nobody thought about. 9 days later, they came up the mountain with a cake, because it was my 70th birthday on April 4th. Sheila and a young man with a camera, a cake from a bakery in Quezon City that had not survived the ride, and Lorna and Shira and the couple from 4A standing where the young man pointed. They had me open the door twice so he could get me opening the door. I said the thing you say. I said, "A year ago I was in Michigan, and today I'm 70 years old in the mountains of the Philippines." Sheila mouthed the words along with me, not to correct me, just because she'd written them. It went up on the 7th with music underneath, 4,100 views, and I watched it 11 times, which I'd rather not have said out loud. It was the nicest thing that had happened to me in 15 years, and it was an advertisement, and both were true in the same room at the same time. Nobody mentioned my letter. Sheila was warm and busy, and it had gone to somebody else by then. A tax preparer in Florida, found through a Facebook group for Americans over here, charged me $260 on April 9th to look at my year. We did it on video at 9 at night my time, with my form up on her screen. She explained it twice because I made her. A prize is income, not a gift, not a discount. Income at what it's worth in the year you receive it. So for 2025, the government had me down as a woman with $31,600 of other income. Then she told me the second part. Because of the prize, part of my Social Security became taxable too. It never has been in my life. It isn't if you haven't got much else. Put $31,600 on top of it and you cross a line that hasn't moved since 1993, and a piece of my own check turns into income. She ran it while I sat there listening to the rain hit the window of an apartment I had won. $1,580.10, due on April 15th. Because I live outside the country, the date moves to June 15th on its own, for paying as well as filing. The interest starts April 15th either way. So I asked her the obvious thing. The apartment rents for $5,760 a year, and the form says $31,600. So why not file the true number and send them the arithmetic? She said I could, and then she told me what it costs. File the true number and a notice comes back with 30 days on it to answer. 30 days to a mountain on mail that takes weeks, and I have nothing to answer it with. The real rent in writing would have to come from the woman who collects it, and she works for the man who owns the building, and he has Kalina for a client. The clean way is a corrected form from the company, and she'd seen those take most of a year. She offered me the payment plan first, $53 a month for 30 months, half the penalty. 30 months owing a government I'd spent 34 years not telling. Starting the month rent came back into my life. No. So her advice was the dull advice. Pay what they reported. If a correction comes, ask for it back. I had about $600 in the credit union that night, and $774 coming in May, and the bill for $1,580.10 for a year that somebody gave me for free. It wasn't despair. I'd spent March hunting $40 a month in the food and $20 in the transport. That stopped. You cannot save your way to $1,580 on $774 a month. The question quit being, where do I cut? It became, what do I sell, and what am I willing to be? I knew the answer to the second half of that before I let myself write it down. There's exactly one thing I can do with my hands that anybody pays for, and I'm not allowed to do it here. A tourist stamp is not permission to work. There's a short permit the Bureau gives, but somebody registered here has to petition for it, and it names one job for one company. Nobody petitions for a woman cutting hair in her own room. I put it back out of my head for 3 months. A lawyer for Kalina wrote back on April 20th. Attorney Sarmiento, perfectly courteous. They would review the valuation with their accountant and revert. No date. He used the word revert, which I have since learned means anywhere from a week to never. I want to be fair to them because this story would sit easier if they were crooks. They ran a legal promotion with a permit number on the poster. They asked me to sign a tax form, and I signed it without reading, and their accounting reported the number their marketing had made up. That's a company doing 2 things at once with nobody looking across the hall. There was nobody in it to be angry at. Meanwhile, April 15th went by. People ask why I didn't just go home. The ticket in my folder had my name on it and no cash value. Prize tickets don't refund and don't transfer. I called and asked in April, and a very nice person confirmed it. So I wrote out the Michigan column because everybody who says go home has never once put it on paper. A one-bedroom in Escanaba is 700 and change, and you heat it October to May, so call the roof 10,200 a year. The loan, 3,120. Food and power and a phone and 3 pills, 6,000. 4,000 a year to own and run a used car, plates and insurance and gas and the garage, because nobody lives up there without one. $23,320, no furniture anywhere in it, against $9,288 a year of Social Security. 2 lines come off my Baguio list the day I go home. The $43 a month for immigration and the $30 for the bank. $73 a month, call it $900 a year. And one big thing comes back on, and it's the honest argument for going home, so I'll say it straight. The $200-$290 they take out of my check for Medicare Part B, which over here buys me nothing because Medicare does not cross the ocean, would turn back into medicine the day I landed in Detroit. $900 a year and a doctor against that Michigan column. It still doesn't close. I could rent a chair again. I ran it twice because I didn't care for the first answer. If I went back at 70 and worked a full year on the books, on that shoulder, and declared $14,000, it would fill an empty year in my record and raise my check about $40 a month. The self-employment tax that buys that credit takes $2,000 of the $14 straight back, so $12 is what I would hold. And somebody will say the visa wants $15,000 sitting in a Philippine bank. Put the $12 on top of my check, and I'm still $2,000 under the column. A year back on that rubber mat with my arms over my head, and that's how much of the deposit it buys. None of it. That was the last door. I shut it on May 20th, working out with a notebook what my life would cost from July 1st. And then I carried the page down to Emmeline's shop because I wanted somebody who actually lives here to tell me I'd got it wrong. $774 coming in. She put her finger on the rent line first. 18,000 pesos for one room with a small kitchen and its own bathroom in Bacacang Central. $296. Her cousin had turned it up in a Facebook group and she'd flipped a receipt over and written the number on it for me, because the cheap end of this town lives on Facebook and on paper signs taped to posts, where a foreigner cannot reach it without somebody local handing it over. She said the price was fair. Then she said what she pays for her own place on Bocacon, $6,000, and she sleeps in the back of it. She didn't argue with the rest. Electricity at the July rate, $35. Water, $13. Internet, $21. Phone, $14. Cooking gas and laundry and soap, $36. Food, $201, which is high for this country because I'm one American shopping for one. Transport, $19. 3 pills, $48. And immigration, $43. That $514 a year spread across 12. $726. If that were the whole list, I'd be fine, and it needs saying, because there are people in this city living decently on less. Here's the rest of my list, and every line of it sits across an ocean where she had no way to argue with me. $100 a month into an envelope for a doctor, because I have no insurance here and can't buy any at 70. That's the envelope against the day somebody says a word I don't like. $138 for that storage unit in Michigan. It started at $119 and they raised it twice while I was gone. $30 in bank charges and a Michigan phone number kept alive so the credit union and Social Security can reach a person who exists. And $260 on the 15th of every month until March of 2031. In 2019, my rotator cuff went, and I couldn't work for 5 months, and a woman paid in cash for 30 years has no disability coverage and no sick pay, so it went onto credit cards. In March of 2021, I rolled $18,200 of it into one loan at 11.9% over 10 years, and Verna co-signed because my name wasn't worth anything by itself. People tell me to just stop paying that one. I'm 8,000 miles away. What can they do? No, it doesn't land on me. It lands on a 66-year-old woman still standing on a mat all day. $1,254 out, $774 in, $480 a month. And this is the part that turned my stomach. The apartment they gave me, with the power and the water and the internet on it, rents for 29,160 pesos. At 60 3/4 to the dollar, that is $480 to the dollar. The hole in my life was exactly the size of the gift. I said that out loud in her shop, and she didn't make a speech about it, and she didn't look up. She said 6,000 again, and something about her sister-in-law living 4 years in a room off the Asen Road. Then she went back to sweeping her own floor. So I stood there, holding a page with $480 at the bottom of it, and worked it out myself. She wasn't telling me I couldn't live in this country. She was telling me I couldn't live in that building. I'd spent 5 weeks on the wrong problem. I signed the letter on May 22nd, telling the storage company in Escanaba that Verna had my authority to open my unit and dispose of everything in it. Michigan makes you name in writing anybody besides yourself who uses a unit, so her address went on it. I paid $30 to courier the original, 10 by 10, everything I owned that hadn't gone in a suitcase. The chest freezer I won at the hardware store in 2011 that I'd hauled through 2 apartments because I won it. 9 tubs of Christmas, including every card anybody ever sent me, which is not a charming fact about a person. And 4 shoeboxes of index cards, 34 years of clients, name, formula, developer, timing, and on the back, the things you write down so you don't forget. Daughter's name, hip surgery, don't ask about the son. I told Verna to put those in the dumpster. She asked twice, and I said yes twice. 4,000 heads of hair, 34 years of money, not one line of it anywhere a government could ever see, into a dumpster behind a storage row in June. Verna opened the door on the 3rd, and it took her and her nephew 2 days. A man who buys estates took the freezer and the recliner and the dresser as one lot for $385. The Saturday sale in her garage brought $965. The dumpster cost $185. $1,165 for 70 years. She wouldn't take a cent for the 2 days. That part was not a plan. That part was being cleaned out. The corrected form came on June 12th by email from Attorney Sarmiento with a proper apology in it. Box 3, $3,450, 6 months of what the unit actually rents for, plus the ticket that brought me here. I sent it to Florida and paid another $75 to finish the return. My federal tax for 2025 came to $0, not reduced, 0. At $3,450 of income income, none of my Social Security counted, and my deductions at 70 came to nearly 7 times that. She also told me, gently, that I hadn't been required to file at all. Verna wired the money on the 15th. The wire cost $30, so $1,135 landed, 3 days after I found out I had never owed anybody $1. I sat down on the floor and put my back to the bed, in an apartment I had 15 days left in, holding a phone that said 0. No tax and nothing left in the unit either. 3 weeks later, most of it went down as the move-in money on the room I cut hair in. Nobody did anything wrong to me. That's the part I keep chewing. Everybody was polite, everybody followed a rule, and I emptied out my entire life to pay a bill that never existed. I closed the unit on the 20th, 8 days after I knew the tax was nothing, and that one was a decision. I could have gone on paying $138 a month to keep an empty 10 by 10 warm in Escanaba. I didn't. It was the first cold thing I did this summer, and there were 3 more behind it. I handed the key to Lorna on June 30th. There's a keypad on 4C, and she reset the code while I stood there with my 2 suitcases. 4 seconds. It was correct, and it was her job, and I've thought about those 4 seconds more than I'd like to admit. 8 nights in a transient place by the market at 800 pesos a night, $105, and it came out of the July check on the 8th, not out of Verna's money. I went to see a room in Irasan on July 6th, 8,000 pesos a month, up a run of concrete steps off the Asin Road, a bed, a window, a shared bathroom 2 doors down, and a woman running it who was straight with me about everything, including the water. Her chair sits in the doorway of the downstairs room at the foot of those steps, and while I was looking at the bed, she called up and asked who else would be coming. Not unkindly, it's her house, and I expect she asks everybody. And in the room, there was no sink and no outlet near the window, only the one by the door. I could have afforded that room. On the May 20th arithmetic, 8,000 instead of 18 takes $165 off the list, and the whole drops from 480 to 315. I told her I'd let her know and went back down the steps. I told myself it was the shared bathroom, 70 years old with a bladder 2 doors down in the night. That was not it. I took the room in Bacacang Central on July 8th. 18,000 pesos, 1 room and a corner with a 2-burner and a sink, a window that only opens 4 inches, and a landing outside with a roof over it where a person can stand and watch it rain. The man who owns it lives in Manila and takes the rent by transfer. The 2 rooms along the landing are students who go out at 7 and come back after dark. And the stairs come up from a side gate on the lane, not past the sari-sari where the women sit all day. I'd love to tell you I noticed that afterward. A deposit of 2 months and a month in advance on top of it. 54,000 pesos, $889 out of the storage money. The 2 months of it come back when I go, on paper. In practice, a deposit here goes onto your last 2 months of rent, if the man in Manila honors it, and I have never met him, and the plane is still on top of that. My check lands on the 2nd Wednesday, and that month it was the 8th. That is the only thing that let me hand all that over and still eat. $71 for the immigration extension, on top of the $75 I'd already sent to Florida. What was left of my whole life in Michigan was $100. Sheila called on July 13th. Callie now wanted somebody to close out the campaign, and Lorna, who knows that office, had put my name in front of them. Nobody there ever asked me where I was living. Not on the call, not on the contract, not once since. The offer was straightforward, and she didn't pretend it was a favor. Callie now would pay me a fixed amount every month for the use of my name, my photograph, my age, and my story, with no end date on it. None of it for the camera. When they ask me into a video, I go for nothing, because of the year they gave me. $120 a month, paid in pesos at the day's rate. I asked for 200. She asked, and the answer came back 120, and I believe she asked. I signed on July 21st, 12 months, renewing, 30 days notice either side. One clause their lawyer put in on purpose says I have to state in every video that I received the accommodation free of charge, because that's the American rule when there's money between you and the company. Another, further up, he wrote just as carefully, The paper is a license for the use of my likeness and my story. It is not a contract for services, and nobody at Kalina may ask me to perform a service in this country under it. Sheila read that one out twice like it was a kindness. He wrote it to protect them, and it's the only reason I can say the rest of this out loud. 2 days later, on the 23rd, I stopped putting the 100 in the envelope. That $100 was most of the 165 between a room where a woman can come in and sit down and a room where she can't. What it cost is that a doctor's visit here runs 600 to 1,200 pesos, which I can find, and anything past that, a scan, a night, a fall on wet concrete going down to the road, I cannot. There's no 100 a month behind me now. There's whatever is in the tin on the shelf. I took the case out of the bottom of the suitcase on July 26th, where it had been under that winter coat since Detroit, and sat on the bed with the shears in my lap, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. And I finally understood what the 18,000 peso room had been for. A door, a chair, a mirror, and no landlady counting who came up my steps. Here's the version I didn't take. If I'd taken the 8,000 room, the whole would be 315. The storage unit, 138. The doctor envelope, 100. Kalinao, 120. 358 against 315. It closes, with no shears in it anywhere. Sheila called 5 days after I signed for the expensive room. 5 days, and I'll be square about them. I would not have waited them out. Nobody had offered me anything on July 6th, and I turned down the cheap room anyway, and I turned it down because of the door. The room was the decision, made on July 8th, 2.5 weeks before I let myself know I'd made it. Everything after that is me building a reason for it. That's the ugliest thing in this story, and it's mine. The first one was July 28th, an Australian woman named Trish, 63, whose husband is here on a contract. She'd been going to a place at the mall and hating it, and somebody in a group put us together. She sat in a plastic chair with a towel around her shoulders. I cut her hair in 40 minutes, and she put 600 pesos on the table. 600 pesos, $9.88. I'd asked Emmeline about all of it in the 3rd week of July, before I'd admitted to myself I was considering it. 2 papers get mixed up here. The license isn't the problem. Hairdressing here is a technical certificate, and a private cut in a private room isn't licensed at all. It's the permission to work I don't have. Money for a service on a tourist stamp is working. Emmeline put it in about a dozen words. She said, "They will not fine you. They will put you on a plane and you cannot come back. Ever. There's a list and you go on it." Then she told me about the 2 foreigners picked up on Siargao that month for running a homestay and a little cafe, and how the immigration men who arrested them had walked in first as customers. My flight home left Manila on July 30th at 11:40 in the morning. I was in Bacacang with a bucket under the sink, and I had a woman coming at 2. A message came in on August 5th from somebody I don't know. 1 initial for a signature. Said she'd got my name from a friend and could I do a trim on Friday. I asked, which friend? She said, oh, from the group. There are 4 groups. Everybody says the group. I sat on the landing a long while with the phone in my hand. The water was off that week and I had 2 pails going. I typed yes. The video was the next day. Lorna opened 4C for 2 hours on August 6th. It's empty between tenants and the new people come on the 15th. Sheila and the young man came up on the 4 in the morning van. They set a net of apples on the counter, no better for the road than the cake in April, and laid a folded throw over the arm of the chair. They asked me to stand at the window because the light was better there, and I said, fine. The true reason I said fine is that the door has a keypad and I don't know the code. I said the disclosure line first, the way their lawyer requires. I said I received a free year of accommodation from Kalina Living. Then the young man nodded at me, and I looked into a telephone on a little tripod in the front room of an apartment I do not live in, and I said, "I'm 70 years old and I live in Baguio." Every word of that is true. I am 70, I do live in Baguio, and the whole thing is a lie. And I'm the one who said it, in a staged room, 37 days after I handed back the key. They got it in 2 takes. Sheila hugged me and she meant it. She's a decent young woman doing a job. In my bag, under the folded rain jacket, were my shears, because at 4 o'clock Trish was coming back for the color she'd been talking herself into for a week. I walked back down Lagarda in the rain, saying the whole thing out loud to myself like an old woman, which is what I am. I did the color at 4, and she talked the whole way through it, and I was glad of it. The woman who signed with an initial came on the 7th. Canadian, teaching a term at one of the universities, perfectly ordinary, and she left 200 pesos on top. My hands weren't steady the first 10 minutes. She noticed and had the grace not to mention it, and it will be like that every time now. The 480 is closed, 4 lines, $138 a month, because there is no storage unit in Escanaba anymore, and there's nothing left in Michigan with my name on it but a loan, a credit union account, a phone number, and a woman who co-signed. $100 a month, because I stopped saving for a doctor. $120 a month, because I sold a company the permanent use of my face, my age, and my story. And $122 a month out of my own 2 hands, in cash, in a rented room, from women who aren't from here either. 600 pesos for a cut, 1,300 for a cut and color. 2 in the last days of July, 2 so far in August, 1 at 4 o'clock today. 12 heads, 8,600 pesos, and about 1,200 of it goes straight back out on tube color and developer a client carries up from Manila for me. 7,400 is what stays. August is the first month all 4 pieces run at once, and being on pace is not the same as being safe. 1,016 going out, 1,016 coming in, and not $1 over. The company pays me $120 a month to be a woman who is happy here. My shears pay me $122 so I can actually stay. $2 apart, and only one of them can put me on a plane. And the joke on top of that is that the safe 120 is the one that puts my face on their emails and their videos, with no end date. A woman doing what I'm doing at 4 o'clock this afternoon ought to be nobody at all, and being nobody is the one thing I already sold. And that's the real price. 34 years I took money in my hand and didn't write it down, and I pay for it in every check I will get for the rest of my life. At 70, in a country where I'm a guest with 22 months left on the counter and $600 I don't have for the flight out that ends them, I'm doing the identical thing again. On purpose. Eyes open. People say fly to Hong Kong for 3 days and the counter starts over. It does. But I'd be handing my passport back to an officer with a room full of haircuts behind it. And if he says no, I'm outside with 2 suitcases. Only this time the penalty isn't a small pension. It's a list I'd never get off. Emmeline hasn't answered a message since August 2nd. 2 of my women used to be hers. She knows, and she hasn't said a word, and she isn't going to. And we're not going back to an hour of shop talk every 6 weeks. That's the other thing I paid and didn't put in the 4 lines, and it's the one I'd take back. That's the shape of my life now. I go on being a 70-year-old American woman who is visibly happy in the mountains of the Philippines for as long as an office in Makati finds it useful. And on the morning they don't, 120 of my 1,016 goes out the window. The card is back in the drawer, under the case with the shears, which is where it lives. I won a free year. I did win it. It was the best year of my life, and I'd put my name in that barrel again tomorrow. At 4 o'clock, I'll set the plastic chair in the middle of the floor with the towel over the back of it and prop the mirror where the light from the window falls on the right side of a person's head. And then there'll be somebody on the concrete steps outside. And until she comes around onto the landing, I won't know who she is. If you're sitting at your own table tonight with a notebook and a number at the bottom of it, tell me what your number is. I'd like to know I'm not the only one.